2026 has barely begun, and the world feels like crap. I have plans to cover a certain movie that's more befitting to these times, but for now, we're gonna take a look at a video game I streamed last year, Pokemon Uranium. According to two fan wikis, this game started development back in 2007 by creators JV and Involuntary Twitch using RPG Maker XP. It's been through many iterations and only came out in 2016 in a near completed state. At the time, it was a pretty big deal to have a Pokemon fan game with as much content as actual mainline Pokemon games, but 2 weeks after that launch, Nintendo put a cease and desist that stops the game from having any major updates. It sucks that Nintendo continues to put down fan projects that encroach on its brand, but the fan creators do seem to accept these decisions and let sleeping dogs lie. And it's not like Pokemon Uranium has been pulled down everywhere. It's still up and running, though there's no chance of it getting any major updates aside from any fixes or patches. That said, with all due respect to all the work that went into this game, I was frustrated with it a few times. So much so that I often said that I would rather play a Gen 1 game on the Game Boy. It's not a bad game, but I think its merits are overblown. So bear with me as I go over this seemingly large game that couldn't quite reach its full potential. This is Pokemon Uranium. Right away, the game tries to emulate the Gen 3 intros, though I wish more happened during the entire minute of the MC running. Then it shows the starter Pokemon with colored backdrops before switching to some foreshadowing for later. Also, the title screen of this game's main legendary looks pretty good in that shade of green. Once you start a new file, you can choose between a regular game or even a randomizer/Nuzlocke mode. For those not in the know, a Nuzlocke is akin to how some Fire Emblem games have permadeath. Any Pokemon that faints, including the ones you're trying to catch in the wild, are no longer usable for the rest of the game. And if you run out of usable Pokemon, it's game over. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You're greeted by this game's professor, Bambo, or whatever, of the Tandoor region. It's your standard intro with a cute little kitty owl to show that this game has its own fake Pokemons to play with. Your player character gets 3 body types, and I think they all share the same they/them pronouns. But for my character, I assumed that I was playing someone going by he/him. And we jump into what I'm sure is another fun and exciting adventure. 10 years ago, my family lived in Beale Beach City. Oh. This seems kinda bleak. Yeah, this is actual backstory for your character. Your father, Kellen, was part of the Pokemon Rangers, while your mother, Lucille, was a nuclear scientist. Oh god, is this gonna turn into Sodor Fallout? Well, 10 years ago, there was a meltdown at a nuclear power plant that Lucille was working at. She went into the basement while an outsider, named Cameron, tried evacuating everyone else before things went to hell. With how quickly that happened, you'd think everyone died. But nope, apparently only Lucille just disappeared. Because her body was never found, Kellen became a more distant father to your character. Instead, you spend your early years living with your elderly aunt, which is where the story begins. The professor is hiring assistants, and you want to take up the offer. Naturally, your auntie gives you running shoes, and along the way you meet your childhood friend Theo, son of Cameron, and an actual child. He's also looking to be an assistant, and the professor ends up hiring both of you. This means getting your own starter Pokemon, but the game doles them out based on the answers you give to some aptitude test. You can figure out which answers lead to which starters, but I much prefer just getting to pick them. The starters are Orchinx, the Grass Steel type Pokemon, Raptorch, the Fire Ground type Pokemon, and Eletux, the Water Electric type Pokemon. And I naturally went with Orchinx because cat. Theo picks Eletux and we have our first battle, which I win due to type advantage, and he runs home crying like a baby. Cameron approaches you to ask what happened, but eventually comes to understand, though I think the dialogue will be different if you lose that battle. It's clear that Theo has an arc about growing from a whiny brat to a more competent and mature rival, though just how long it'll take to get there is another story. Either way, Cameron gives us a Pokepod, which is meant to serve as a phone, map, and radio all rolled into one. I probably would have used the radio if it means using the music to affect encounters. Oh well. Anyway, the professor teaches us how to catch Pokemon, gives us the Pokedex, and now the game can actually start. Now, let me start by stating a couple positives about the game. The visual style is pretty nice, mostly inspired by Gen 4 with a little splash from Gen 3. And the day-night cycle seems to work as intended. The music tracks are mostly remixes of original songs, but still handled well despite not always looping correctly. Where things start to annoy me comes into the overall battle system. Visually, it looks to be fine, but the UI could have used more work. Everything's laid out horizontally when I would rather have them stacked into rows. Also, it's very evident that not every move has a proper animation, which is a product of the game coming out in an incomplete state. Finally, and this is mostly a me thing, I feel like battles are imbalanced. I get that fan-made games are for a particularly niche or even hardcore audience, but a forgiving first route can help with easing players into an entirely new game world. Instead, we have trainer battles here, and even with my grass steel type Pokemon, some of them came close to defeating me. The game also expects you to grind a lot, which is something that newer RPGs try to avoid. This is why newer Pokemon games have experience share or experience all earlier, even if that means making the game easier. And even if that can make those games too easy, I always thought of the series as a casual one that can be challenging on occasion. But this feels like it took the grindy parts of Gen 1 and updated it to Gen 5 standards. Anyway, the first town you reach through the route is Calvar Town. This is where you're introduced to the Pokemon Center, and there's even a global trade system, which is pretty impressive for an RPG Maker game. There's also a trainer you could repeatedly battle for experience. It's not the best way to circumvent the issues, but I'll take what I can get. Speaking of Pokemon, this game is a combination of classic Pokemon we know and love, and a ton of original Fakemons. Some of them were made by other creators, and those would appear in other projects, but many I feel like they could belong in the main series. I love me a kitty bird for starters, and I think this game has more cat Pokemon than most other games. While I was streaming this game, I initially played an older release that showed some Pokemon with static sprites, but after I updated it, those same mons started moving, so I know that this game does get updated, even if it's for mystery gift Pokemon with new skin variants. It's a shame that the new devs only focus on that and not, fixing or adding in things that were left out. Eventually I make it to Naltok City, which has the first gym. To even get inside it, you have to talk to this man outside who gives you a house key to the gym leader's home. Obsessed fan much? The gym leader is called Maria, and she uses normal type Pokemon. It might not seem bad, but between having my team being mostly defensive and her Pokemon being a bit higher leveled, it seems like it can stretch out the battle far longer than it needs to. But I finally won after 10 minutes, which leads me to another easy battle against Theo. He gives me Rock Smash, meaning I can get past the rocks in Moki Town and advance the story, but only after meeting the Professor too, who tells us about getting rewarded for catching enough Pokemon in certain spots. As I progress, I started noticing more bugs from music that isn't playing, or my character getting stuck on a running pose when sprinting into a wild battle, which happens in every fan game I play on this engine, but there's one really big one that I'll discuss in full later. The second gym in Barol Town is inside a cave. Unlike other games that have gym leaders revolving around a certain type, the leaders here have more mixed teams based on the types found around their areas. By now, things are moving a bit faster now that I have access to stronger moves in Pokemon. It's still a pain to get them leveled up, but at least the battles aren't dragging on as much. The second gym leader is named Davern, who's a miner, and he took less time to beat than Maria, so I'm on the right track. We continue, meet some more new Pokemon I like, but also... Alright, anything... What the... What is that? Yeah, exactly. I guess not being tied to Nintendo means designs and lore are T-rated and up. We team up with Theo to go through Comet Cave, and this is where I turned my S'more into a Fyroke. What, you never seen a s'more before? It's clearly a fiery ant. Then right at the end, when Theo bails on us, we get into a battle with Talard, which is an evolved Grillzard that just so happens to be shiny. Too bad it's not very good, even with its ground dragon typing. At the next town, Professor Bambo wants us to help one of his colleagues called Professor Cypress. Someone's been stealing Pokemon from her lab and you need to find them. You get the Pokemon Speech Translator, which lets you talk to Pokemon. It is the coolest feature in this game. Letting you talk to Pokemon can open up many opportunities to see how Pokemon react to you. It could be like some RPGs where the animals have joke dialogue that could lead to some funny quests, and it only works during certain story beats, of course. After battling some of the Owltons, we find the thief, who happens to be a humanoid Pokemon named Garlic Kid. It seems to be a superhero for Pokemon, and it's using other Pokemon to battle you? Okay, that's kinda neat, even if I have to question the logic behind this. Once we beat it, we're rewarded with the experience share, which really helps to cut down on the grinding. But now we come to another issue I have with the game. The routes feel too long at times. The first one took a while, then you go through a couple more cave maps, and there's one that takes you along a beach which seems to stretch on and on and on. That's a lot of trainer battles that are hard to avoid, and they're the only way for your team to get stronger outside of wild battles that don't always reward you good experience. It's also in that one cave that I found another bug. Transitioning from one section of it to another briefly plays the music for a non-cave route before reverting back to the cave music.
What the was that?
Then after repeating this warp a couple times, that track kept playing, and when I go to face this trainer, it locked up. This is right when I caught a Minion, which is one of the Pokemon I really wanted to use because it's a kitty bat that turns into a vampire cat. It didn't take long to catch another when the game bugged out, but man, this can happen with a limited amount of time and testers. By the way, you know this game was made in the mid-2000s when some of the dialogue includes 1337, or lead, and noob. God, I'm old. We get another Theo fight, and he's still not all that strong, and we still haven't gotten to what makes this game unique. Remember how this game is called Pokemon Uranium? We haven't heard anything yet related to nuclear power since the start, but that changes now. In Beale Beach City, we get an egg, and it seems most Pokemon have unique egg sprites. And we get more examples of map and animation limitations with the elevator in the marketplace. My egg hatched into a Nupin, which is some kind of germ Pokemon, and this is also where we enter Pokemon Rangers HQ to meet our dad. He's surprised to see us, but is happy, and we get actual plot stuff. We're told that Cameron is at Power Plant Epsilon, which is where your mother was at before she disappeared. He's overseeing the construction of a new power plant that's being built. We're supposed to meet him, and Theo wants to tag along. Sure, send kids to a place with potential radioactive material. I'm sure nothing bad can come of this. We meet up with Cameron, who's in the ruins, to get some sort of closure to Lucille's disappearance. It's not radioactive anymore, but it did something to the Pokemon there.
What the fudge?
Yes, exactly. Me. So, nuclear-type Pokemon. How do I describe this? Well, they're as glass cannon as it gets, as their type is super effective against all other types except itself and steel types, while all other types are super effective against it in return. They also don't obey you as relative to other Pokemon, and that can only be solved late in the game. 36 of the nuclear Pokemon you find are just variants, which you may end up missing since you're not able to come back here after this event. There are also only 7 original nuclear Pokemon, most of which aren't dual type, which is good because they won't fall to attacks that hit at more than one weakness for 4 times the damage. And also they actually obey you. In all seriousness, I do think they look cool, and there is something to be said for a fan game that explores an idea like that. I just can't imagine it making that much sense. Because if those Pokemon are radioactive, wouldn't they hurt their trainers just by being around them? Also, these Mons have been on this island for 10 years and are still going wild like this? As we'll see later, I'm amazed that they never traversed beyond this one island. Anyway, Cameron gives us a tracker to keep an eye on you. and is suggesting you might have a better shot at finding your lost mother here, or at least her remains. At least this is a good place to grind, especially with the dual-type nuclear Pokemon who have quad weaknesses you can exploit. There's also just something creepy about this place, similar to Pokemon Mansion. There are also notes scattered about some kind of secret experiment, which makes you wonder what was going on here. Again, it's an interesting idea, though I quibble with its execution. Eventually, we find some strange chamber with a computer saying that something is suspended in there. But it malfunctions and we end up dropping down a hole, where a nuclear Tropine awaits us.
I used the PST. Kill the intruder, crush, destroy, kill.
Well then! And it's level 30. Shoot. Even with the possible weaknesses it has, this thing would probably sweep my team with, and I catch it with a quick ball no problem. Then I pass out due to the radiation down here, only to wake up after being rescued. It now looks like I'm slightly radioactive. That can't be good. Cameron doesn't know what to make of the notes we found, but that's a mystery for another day, as it's time to head back to the city and take on the third gym. The third gym leader is named Callie, who has a mix of water, grass, and ground-type Pokemon. It's already harder when gym leaders use multiple types, but when using new Pokemon that you haven't seen before, that can pose a challenge. But I managed to earn the third badge, and as we leave town, the power plant explodes. With radiation creeping in from afar, Kellen needs to head over, but not before giving you a ferry ticket to the next route. But before we can even get to the damn ferry, we have to help the Rangers fight off some nuclear Pokemon like Nuclear Corsola and Nuclear Gyarados? If these nuclear Pokemon could actually swim across the seas, why aren't they more common elsewhere? Anyway, with the nuclear Pokemon repelled, we get on the ferry to get a little rest. Or go face all the trainers like Theo. Again!
Just want to battle? I need healing.
After beating the trainers and helping the captain with seasickness, which doesn't get you anything, we make it to Route 8. Looks like a nice place. Just wish they didn't dump me off in a spot that might boot me back across the sea if I lose. At least there is a house with a healing NPC and a PC. I make it to Venoville Town, where you start hearing of a Pokemon named Optius. Along with Mutios, they supposedly created the universe with help from Arceus. The town church also goes into some history about how Groudon gave birth to not only Heatran, but two other Pokemon named Lanthan and Actan. Those three are supposedly the Brothers of Steel. But if Heatran can be female, then, well, maybe this is the Detective Boys of Uranium. There's also a trio of sea monsters, and a whole nother side of Tandoor we've yet to visit that's all water. It makes you excited to want to try and find and capture these Pokemon later. Sadly, the legendaries mentioned here are not obtainable in this game, except for Lanthan and Actan. Anyway, we help some farm lady deal with an infestation of aliens? And we have to avoid them to confront the ones sending these things. S51A, which is the evolved form of those other alien Pokemon, and who belongs to the fourth gym leader, Sheldon. He's not as religious as the Venoville townsfolk, though why he stays there is a mystery, and the farm lady gives us a free S51 out of it. It's cute for a psychic steel type. Right now, the Pokemon I'm fighting against was level 35, while mine are in the mid-20s, so I have a lot of work to do. Eventually, Orchinx evolved into Metalynx at level 28. Why so late? Because the starters in this game only have one evolution. Well, sort of, but we'll get back to that later. I make it to the fourth gym, which is science-themed, and it has a memory puzzle for invisible light bridges. At first, I thought just having Fyroke would carry me against all the Steel-type trainers, but then they start using non-Steel types, and Psychic Pokemon? What does Psychic have to do with technology? We eventually face Sheldon, and maybe the games are fans of the Big Bang Theory, and his team of level 32 to 33 can kiss my ass! There just wasn't enough experience from fighting wild Pokemon or trainers before this, and few of my Pokemon could withstand the oncoming attacks. Sheldon's Tracton is particularly rough to handle as a Dragon Steel type that hits hard and has a speed boost ability. I needed my newly evolved Faliger using Brick Break to push through. Had that failed, I would have been screwed. After winning, a ranger tells us that Theo is waiting by the entrance. Usually that signals a rival fight, but this time the kid is just sad about losing to us all the time. He doesn't get much time to vent because another nuclear plant melts down. That one ranger sends us away with their Staraptor while they help evacuate everyone else. And wow, look at that image.
It can't be. Another nuclear meltdown.
Now we're all radioactive. That can't be good. We're brought to Legan Town, where all the other evacuees are. We learned that nuclear plant Zeta was the place that got blown up, and the Pokemon on the route between Venoville and here are on the loose, so the Rangers are fighting them off. Not surprisingly, you're asked to help contain the Mons, again. Even Sheldon decides to chip in, despite not being on good terms with Venoville Town, though he does admit to loving the town. Before that, we explore the town and find some ninja that helps Eevee train Pokemon with a certain stat, through a punching bag minigame. Would have been nice to have that sooner. Eventually, we join Kellen and the Rangers on Route 11. As with the previous surges of nuclear Pokemon, this is another good spot to grind for levels. We also see that Kellen has an Imperilla, an evolved form of Primeape. Yeah, this was before Scarlet and Violet gave us Annihilape, which I honestly prefer more. But the animation is half decent for this Pokemon, even if it lags the game a bit. Also, minor shout out to Nuclear Arbok for its body pattern to make it look real dangerous. After pushing back the nuclear Pokemon, Dad thanks us and expresses regret that he wasn't able to spend time with us when we were younger. Duh? And he gives us the Strength HM, which will help us reach Amatri Town, which is back across from where we were before, but now the next path will go through a rainforest. Thankfully, the route I used to get over there has a daycare center, and a lucky egg that doubles experience, and plenty of trainers to earn experience from. Whew. Man, this video is going long, and this game isn't even halfway done. So stay tuned for part 2 when I cover everything else.